What's up, Digidestins? This is Kyle D, better known as RideMyAvatar, and today we're going to be talking none other than a snapshot look at the meta of BT-16 for the English side paired to what we were expecting. So without further ado, let's dive in the video and talk about it. Taking a look, I got the data from Eggman's events. That is the website linked down below if you guys want to check out all the decks yourselves that topped. And usually he updates at every event that gets information. Taking that into account, we're taking a look at the two major events and what their totals ended up being completely. So far, Numemon taking 34.4%, 11 wins out of 32 decks. That's kind of a lot, actually. That's not half yet, but getting close to. Then we have Yellow Vaccine at 5, and then Mirage at 5. Then you have Magna X, which is the Armor Rush version, Imperial Dramon, Blue Flare, All Force, Red Hybrid, Lugamon, and Tyrant. Taking that into account to kind of just see that, you know, Numemon taking the lead for Yellow Vaccine and Mirage. Let's take a look at what BT-16 kind of had in store for what we were expecting. So taking a look here, Bunnies, aka Dog Bunny, 37 wins at 10%, Insects at 10%. This didn't even show up in top 16. This could just mean the deck is underrated, or they just haven't figured out how to make the deck work to their fluency, or however they want to go. Or this could be mostly because of the green only events that could have triggered this to be a little bit higher. Then you have Insects at the same thing. Decks that were kind of just in the green events kind of took up the slot. But if we take them out of the equation and just go into the next one, Blue Armor Rush, which we saw a few tops, Yellow Vaccine, which we're seeing as the second most deck, Yellow Vaccine, which makes a lot of sense. Then you have SOC, which SOC is on the list, Lugamon, that actually SOC SOC, which is Luga, and then Numemon. Numemon wasn't as high as this, but in future formats, people start learning on how to adapt with it, and it does really well going forwards. Keeping that in mind as we're getting this data, it definitely shows that there are tops here. The only one that's an outlier here is Mirage, but I think that comes down to is a lot of Japanese players and stuff like that aren't fond to keep just playing older decks. They like to play the new toys. They like to play those constantly. Decks that seem underrated in their meta isn't actually completely true. I think that comes down to just knowing that a deck is still good. I mean, Mirage in this format is really scary just because it can bounce and just do the shenanigans it wants to, and it doesn't care into some of the matchups because it just doesn't matter. But keeping that in mind going forwards is that, you know, taking those into account matters. If we take a look at Tax TCG, you know, regionals, we have, you know, 3 Numes, 3 Mirage, 3 Magna X's, 2 Yellow Vaccines, 2 Imperial, 1 Luga, 1 Red Hybrid, and 1 Tyrant. Tyrant showing up to be the last place list means Tyrant didn't do as well as it was projected to. And that is because the field is a little bit more diverse, but you still have to get through Nume. And I feel like Numemon hard counters this deck because they have the residual minusing DP effect, and they can, if you give them too much memory, they're going to get that board wide enough and just go like, oh, next turn, when you unsuspend, that thing's dying, because they can reach 15 very comfortably. Keep that in mind, especially going forwards, that sometimes it's just what it's going to be. Now taking a look at the play TCGs, I played in this one. Numemon, Yellow Vaccine, Blue Flare, Nume. You know, we had 8 Numemons, 3 Yellow Vaccines, 2 Mirage, Blue Flare, All Force, Magna X. I think also to take into account is that Numemon is a little more budget friendly to get into events. What do I mean by that? I mean, Numemon doesn't put up a gatekeeper as high as, let's say, Magna right now. Magna X, anything you want to do, base entry level is $200, $220-ish. That's a lot for a lot of players, especially in this economy. There's going to be a lot of players that are just going to go for decks that are a little bit cheaper to buy into, and Numemon is the antithesis of a budget deck. if you take out the Ruin Mode or the Death X's, the deck isn't breaking the bank. I think it touches maybe $100. So I expect more budget-friendly options. This is the go-to. It doesn't help that also the deck is just really powerful. I mean, taking into account that even with the Patamon here, it's expensive. They're just really expensive decks. And when you start getting into expensive decks, players pivot over to strong, cheaper options. And that is factual. Taking a look at Juan's first place list, only has one Ruma and one Death X. So there's $120, maybe 140 right there. And then the rest of the deck is dirt cheap, maybe another 100. It's maybe like, if you had to put these in here, $200, maybe 3, if that. Keeping that in mind going forwards, that the deck is a little more centric to get into, especially if you've had the cards for a good while. But keeping this in mind, taking a look at the first place list in the other event, they are playing Edamons. Edamon is a hard, powerful counter into the Magna X's because it forces them to attack with a minusing 3000 DP. But what happens here is that what they'll do is make it attack, and then they'll go into Valkyriemon Ace, but minuses 8000 DP, so the protection won't be live anymore. And if you have a blocker on board, you can easily just take the trade. And then your opponent's kind of just sitting on the back burner, just going like, well, I just lost my threat. And that is vitally important because those DP minuses are residual. And just keeping that in mind, this plus this being 8000 DP minusing to it, all you need to do to get to that 13k threshold is another, what? 8,000, 6,000 DP. Mumsemon X, boom. What could happen very commonly happens actually is that the Garymon that's on board gets into Numemon X, gets all the way up to Mumsemon X, then they hard play, you know, another Nume to digivolve into Edamon, and then they force the attack. And because Valkyrie Ace does exist, they're most likely not going to promote that egg up because, again, they know Valkyrie Ace is coming because you wouldn't do this combo otherwise. Keeping that in mind when deck building, that Edamon became a very powerful choice pick, and I have no objections on this. I think this is a great card. At the end of the day, this is what deck building is all about, is trying to answer the biggest threat of the problem, and that is Magna X. Magna X is a turtle. You need to get through the turtle. How do you do that? You make it when they can't get the protection online and force the out. And that's all you have to do. And again, that's what you're going to kind of see from now on. I expect 2 Edamons in every list going forwards just because it can be blast aced on top of, and it's very valued. Then taking into Lugamon taking up a slot as well. If you look at it, it's very much a stock list that you kind of expect. I like the Ugamon just being what you need for this deck to search out, but you have Wisdom Trading, Mismem Boost. I love the Crimson Blaze to help counteract the Numemon threat because clearing their board and preventing them from playing something really does help out and keeps you in the game. Keeping that in mind, you have like Doruga, Fenrir Luga. Kind of like this list. This is kind of unique actually because it uses the Dorugamon plus the Fenrir Luga. Because Daruga can deal with some threats, especially, you know, if you force attacks or anything like that, if you have the ability to do so, and this one does. You, in a Tyrant matchup, you pick the buddy that doesn't have the protection skill, you force them to attack, you go into Darugamon, and then you pop the Tyrant because it's unsuspended, it doesn't have its protections. You get rid of Tyrant, and then you block the secondary attack, which is actually a really cool combo to do. If you can get that off. I mean, is it likely to? Probably not, but we'll have to see in the long game. Then we have Yellow Vaccine. This is what you kind of expect. I'm expecting more Digimon Emperors going forwards just because Digimon Emperor helps in the Numemon matchup to slow them down, because if they promote up, they're going to lose that memory. If it passes back to you, that your turn effect disappears because it's no longer your turn. And that is vitally a problem for it because they can't gain the values off the Ukus. And it kind of also starts punishing a lot of decks too, because if you minus their turn, they're not getting that back usually. You know what happens with Magna X Antibody. It's just that wall of a guy, and you need to either get rid of the Rappas in the sources when its protection skill is there. I think this should not have been Armor Form. This should have been strictly Magnamon. They could not do this shenanigans, but that's just me. I think this being the restriction of Rapid or X Antibody. I love that it says, you have to use Magna, X Antibody, or Armor Form as traits. Makes sense, but being able to just warp onto Rapids is kind of a little nutty in my opinion. Not saying the deck is completely broken, not really. I think the deck is very powerful, especially with Heaven's Judgment. Just being able to clear boards is just annoying as can be. Then, here's another one from the UKs. You got like Pillamon, Patamon, the same thing that you'll expect. They're going up to 2 Heaven's Judgments. The Golden Boys are all here, the armors. I love the Angelwolmon Ace. It helps mitigate, the Magna X Antibody. You can block with yours, or they're not going to swing anyway. Stuff like that does matter, especially if they can't get the protection skill live early enough. Then we got Mirage. Mirage is one of those decks that just doesn't want to go away. I love the tech of Amphimon Ace here. It's just a really good source stripper because, trash up to 4 cards for... You may trash up to 4 cards in your hand for each one trash any number under one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamer, then return one of their Digimon or Tamers without cards into their hand. So this deck will draw a good consistency bet here, and you don't mind your hand being small because it also helps in the mirror. It's just a nice little thing. I know this one says this one here. This one, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in hand for the turn, the Digimon's attack cannot be switched. This is vitally important. This is what makes the deck just not give a rat's rear about anything but itself. Keeping that in mind, Mirage is just going to do Mirage things, and we know what Mirage does, it just OTKs. Keeping that in mind, I think this is vitally important. I love the Amphimon Ace, especially now that, you can Blast Evolve, your opponent's now just looking at you pretty when they're trying to go in with their Magna X's. Then we did have Blue Flare taking up a 3rd place on the Play TCG. I love where the list is going. It's just a basic stock list of what you would expect for Metal Greymon. Blue Flare is just Blue Flare. They did tech in Vikemon Ace, who's going to help de-Digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon, and then none of their Digimon with one or fewer Digievolutions could suspend until the end of turn. And when attacking, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with DP. Your opponent's Digimon with 1 or fewer Digievolutions. Not a bad trade-off. The Ukus are just here to rush because the deck just loves the rush aspect. This applies the early game pressure to keep up in the format. And then, all the good stuff here. I like Full Metal Blaze. Just return 2 of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon to its own hand. Then if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, return 1 of your opponent's level 6 or higher Digimon to the bottom of the owner's deck. What can I say? The deck's going to do what it wants to do. It's going to stun because, let's be honest, on a Ukumon board or anything like that, Metal Greymon's going to stun 3. What's really good about this deck, it's resilient. And this deck, now they're bringing up Male Bergermon up to help counteract the new style of play in against Ukumon. This means you're getting 2 attacks in with 2 security checks. Most likely you're getting through because Metal Greymon isn't losing to most stuff in that list because most of their stuff is small. So you're going to clear out maybe all their security pretty quickly. Then you get to punish them with your Z combo, and now your opponent's just looking pretty. Stuff like that does matter, especially going forwards into a format. Knowing how to counteract certain decks and just being able to stun lock the Ukumons for turns can get really annoying and hard for them to deal with. Then we did get the blue armor deck, which kind of what you expect. Magnamon from the starter deck, BT-8 Magnas, and then, BT-13 Magnas with the Davis, and then Shu just because of the Alliance and the reboot, making your Magna X even bigger to take out more damage. Even with the combination of Final Zubergon Punch and Blinding Ray, it's just going to do what it wants to do. The deck, I'm going to be straight honest with you though, what I see and what I've tested, it's not the playstyle for me. It's too turtly. It's too much of a... If you're in a mirror match, you guys are just playing Harden until you get the out. And if you can't get that out sooner than your opponent, you're screwed. And that comes in the form of Final Zubergon Punch, Shu getting there. If you can get those pieces going online, your opponent is kind of screwed. If they get it before you, you're kind of screwed. It does matter at the end of the day, just sometimes that's just how that goes. Then All Force here. All Force is very interesting. This teched in Davis and Ken just so you could slam down your good boy Vmon here that's going to be searching for you while keeping 1 in raising. And that means you get to climb up and get stuff and get pieces going. And what's nice is the Vmon bounces back at the end of the opponent's turn. If they didn't delete it, you get some value out of it. I mean, being able to Dig and being able to replay it with Davis and Ken, just constantly just adding more value to you, and so you can keep digging for pieces, is vitally strong. I mean, I like Gold V Magna. I like the splash of Magnemon X Antibody. This was also the high rarity one in his list. He was just there to flex with a Magnemon X deck centered around All Force. Let's be honest, that's the only reason why you're flexing one of in there. Nah, just had to mess around. But taking that into account, this does show a lot of information here. Then Imperial Dramon, I tried it out. Similar very stock list here, which is not bad. Giga Death is really good because, you know, that suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, then place up to 10 of your opponent's suspended Digimon at the bottom of the owner's deck in any order. Good field wipe. Then you have Mega Death being Mega Death. But this one's a very interesting tech. I think this might be something I have to probably think about putting this in. Just because of the effect it gains. It gains the blocker early, and then it does the whole Jogress from hand as long as you have the pieces. You know, that does help out, especially because this is for 3 costs. And sometimes that's all you need to do is get the XVmon Stingmon combo, go live, and then you don't have to worry about, you know, getting the Jogress piece down as soon as possible. But I like the Pyildramon BT-12 for the mirror match, you know, trashing the top cards of all your opponent's Digimon. Then if you DNA 2 of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards cannot attack until the end of opponent's turn. Just more stuff to answer threats. And to be honest with you, this deck lives and dies by seeing Davis or Ken. If you do not see that, you're going to be struggling. Then you have Red Hybrid being Red Hybrid. You know, the Louis, the Ukus, just going to town. Gravity Crush, Takuyas, you know, Crimson Blaze. As long as the deck does what the deck does, you don't have to worry about much. Then we do have the Tyrant being the last deck we're going to talk about. No Digitama eggs. I could probably just say that it's most likely the Minitomon, because there's no way you're not playing that in this list. It's kind of very stock list you kind of come to expect. I like that because they didn't probably have the promo, they went with this. This Digimon gets plus 1000 DP for each of your other suspended Digimon, and this is all turns effect. This definitely helps out, especially because you're going to get your Shivamon suspended or your Grand Kawaga Ace suspended. And if you get like 2 Tyrants on board, oh good lord, you're going to be getting some scary stuff and shenanigans going live. But being able to have that extra small DP boost does help out even going into mirror matches, because you can get over their DP threshold because you have an all turns effect while they don't. Stuff like that does matter, and it can come up to being some vitally use. And I like the list a lot. I like that decks are starting to tech more Pumamon, try to hate on the Numamon matchup, which you need to. Being able to prevent them from playing Digimon is vitally important, especially even in the mirror match. This thing can slow you down a little bit. Be prepared to kind of just get mollywopped if you play this wrong. Stuff like this does matter at the end of the day, and you need to keep an eye on it. But all in all, though, I'm really excited to see where this goes and where the meta kind of shifts up, and we kind of just expect this. We only have 4 weeks of this meta, and then becomes like EX6, and then EX6 becomes, you know, BT-16 pretty quickly by August. Stuff like that does matter, and I'm kind of excited to see where decks go from here. But what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. Did you like the snapshot? Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and definitely go check out the eggmanevents.com for all your event data needs. But without further ado, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you next one. Peace.